How much money should you have by the time you're age 55? We're going to answer that question on today's episode of Friends Talk Financial Planning. Hi, I'm John Shear, and I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I'm Bridget Sullivan-Mermel, and I have a family financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. And before we get into how much you should have before you're 55, please subscribe. It helps us out. We really appreciate it.
That's right. So, one of the things that's interesting, I think, is that there's no guidelines for people, right? Like, I don't know, I think I'm doing okay, or am I doing okay? How do I do that? And so I want to hear what you have to say. I think we have a similar thought process, but what do you say to people as you start looking at, hey, I'm getting into my early 50s, how much money should I have by the time I'm 55?
Well, by the time you're 55, I'd like to see you have 7 times your net worth in 7 times your annual income in your net worth. So if you're making $700,000 or $100,000 a year, then you have $700,000 in net worth, and that's it. That's what I would like to say. See before you're 55.
Yeah, that's the right range. We talk in a previous episode, like by the time you're 40, we'd like to see it around 3 times your in net worth at 3 times your annual income. So if you're making $100,000 net worth, around 300, and by the time you get into your 50s, we want to see it be up in that 7 times range, right? And by doing that, so why is that useful? Like, what's the meaning? Is I know that if somebody's on that path, that they're going to be okay, right? Whatever that means specifically for them, right? We don't have the details. I kind of relate it to Bridget. Driving a car someplace. Like, listen, if we're going to go to Florida from the Midwest here, we need to head south, right? I don't need to know what road to turn on to get into Disney World, right? When I'm leaving Chicago. Right. I need to know, am I going south or am I going northeast, right? And so these guidelines for me are sort of that, hey, are we headed in the right direction, south by southeast? Super. As I get closer, now I need to get that road map out and nail it down, but this is that sort of directionally accurate thing for me.
Am I on the right track?
Right.
Okay, so that's what we are looking at. Now, there are people that maybe they have that much in their net worth and they're not 55, they're 50. Or they're 45. What do you think about that? Well,
and again, this sort of guideline, what it tells me is and I think it's great for viewers. It's a benchmark. Mm-hmm. Hey, by the time I'm 55, I want to have at least this much. I'm a little bit ahead of the game.
Right.
Maybe that means I can retire a little earlier. Maybe I can take a lower paying job. I'd love to do some teaching at the university, but I can't. Can I take that pay cut and live off? So it's going to give me some more flexibility if I'm ahead. And what if you're behind? Then all is lost. Like, no. Right. If you're not quite there, that goes, oh, geez, maybe I'll have to work a little bit longer. Right. Maybe I need to focus. Maybe the kids are out of the house now and I need to save a little bit more, right? I need to focus on that because for various things. So it's just this idea of, am I on the right track? Hey, geez, I'm actually ahead of the game. That's cool. I have some choices. Boy, I'm kind of behind the game. I better focus on this, right? And it's this quick sort of thumb in the wind way. I know when we get a new client that comes in or a prospective client, I can take a look at their situation. If they're in their early 50s and they're around 7 times their annual income, hey, things are going to be pretty good. Right. If they're ahead of that, boy, we got some different discussions. If they're behind, we're going to have to start talking about catching up. Right. That's all that it is, but it's useful because I don't know, how should I be doing? I'm 48 and I've saved a bunch of money. I'm doing things like, what does that mean? There's so little in the way of those metrics. Like, how do I evaluate that? I don't really know. And this is, I think, a great way to have a sense for whether you're on track or not.
I think that some advisors tell people they need to have a lot more money than that.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think that's true?
It's one of those things that it's sort of in the self-interest in the financial world to scare you as the consumer and say, whoa, you need to have, a gazillion dollars.
Well, they might say about twice of what we're saying.
Yeah, and so I think that the reality is that it's, in some case, having more is better than having less, right? Like, dying, running out of money before you're gone is a problem. Having too much money when you're gone, it's not ideal, but it's less of a problem, right? So for that side, I understand that. But one of the things for me, and I know that's the way that you work also, is that it's not about maximizing the money.
Right.
It's about maximizing what money can do for you.
Right.
The experiences, the happiness, the lifestyle, the reaching your goals, right? And so by focusing more on that, I really, and I've been doing this 20 years now, and I'm telling you that if you're in that, 3 to 7 times, if you're at 7 times your annual income, your net worth by the time you're 55, you are in good shape, right? I've seen it happen. So I think that those other things, it's a little bit different, but it's also proven to be accurate over time, right? And so a little bit more of a realistic viewpoint, perhaps.
Well, and I think that there's the financial industry can be very self-interested, and that's the difference between we're fee only and fiduciary, so we work in the best interest of our clients, and that can in people that are getting paid off of how much money you have in their accounts have an incentive, conscious or unconscious, to act it on, or maybe hopefully not act it on, to tell you that you need more. And scare you into it, make you feel bad that you don't have more.
Right.
And so sometimes people are shocked at what you can do, what we're actually okay with.
It's interesting as I reflect on that. Particularly once people have been with us for a long time, we've got some history and we've got a good, they're on the same wavelength. But when new people come in and talk to us, it's almost, I don't know if it's always, but a lot of the times either, I'm really behind, I need to catch up.
Right.
Or, boy, I feel like I'm in really good shape, I can do these things. And I always talk with folks, I didn't think about that till right now, but I always talk with folks about, well, would it be useful to you just to have an evaluation of where you stand? Right? And if you feel like you're not doing so well, oftentimes you're actually doing better than you think.
Right.
And sometimes if you feel like you're doing really well, you kind of go like, oh boy, that's not so hot, right? We need some other things. And so maybe that's why I find this such a useful conversation, is because people just, how do you know, right? I don't know. How do you know if blood pressure, health-wise, there's various things, right? BMI, I get some gauge, am I in a healthy weight or not? Am my blood pressure good or not? Are my finances good or not? Am I saving enough? There's so little of that out there. That's where I think this is important.
And then some of it's self-interested.
Right,
so
and when you do have the answer, some of it's not really completely objective.
Telling you to do more than you really need. Which again, if you're going to err, it's probably better to err on the side of oversaving. But telling people they need to save twice as much as they need to, just so that you can earn twice as much off of it. I don't. Maybe call me cynical, but I think that might be happening sometimes.
But it's interesting. You think about that. Put that in the medical sense. If your doctor was able to charge the insurance company more, the lower your blood pressure got, and they say, "Boy, Bridget, your blood pressure should be a little bit lower than it is right now," and that's how they get paid more for doing that. You go like, "Hey, wait a minute, that doesn't sound cool," right? And that's what we're talking. And that's and again, and I mean, most people in our world they're sincere, right? I don't think it's intentional, but when you have those inherent biases, it can cause questions, right? So with that, I think that's maybe a good place to wrap things up. How much money should you have by the time you're 55? We want to see you approaching 7 times your income as far as net worth. So net worth 7 times income, then you're going to be in good shape. And remember, that's not a pass or fail. That's a guideline, right? If you're a little bit of ahead, great, you're going to have some flexibility. If you're a little bit behind, you might need to sharpen your pencil and think about your planning a little bit, right? So
great. And I'm Bridget Sullivan Mermel. I've got a family financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. This is John Shearer, and he's got a practice here in Middleton, Wisconsin. We want to encourage everybody to subscribe. That helps us out and helps Google find us and help gain our audience and reach more people.
That's right. And if you like what you hear on our show here, Bridget and I are both members of the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners, a nationwide group of fee-only, tax-focused, holistic financial advisors. You check out acplanners.org to find an advisor in your area. And with that, until next time.
Thanks, John.